These are some step-by-step hints for the questions on the Unit 6 test. Question number 1, Jerry had K pencils. Darcy and Leonard then gave Jerry an additional X pencils each. Which expression could represent the number of pencils Jerry now has? So here is your hint. A visual model might be helpful to you. You might want to go ahead and draw a little picture to show Jerry has K number of pencils, and then see what happens when Darcy gives X pencils to Jerry, and then Leonard also gives X pencils to Jerry. Think about how many X's of pencils are being given to Jerry, and then you will have to match the expression that goes with that situation. So we know that Jerry already has K pencils, and then a certain number of pencils is going to be added to his current amount, which was K. Question 2, suppose that 3 times X is 2 more than Y. Which equation below best represents the relationship between X and Y? Here are your hints for the things that we need to break down. We have the keyword times. We know that times means we are multiplying. So 3 times X means we will be multiplying 3 and X together. And then right here, 2 more than means that we're going to be adding 2 to something. The other word that's very important is the word is. That shows us that we will have an equal sign to make this an equation. So you need to figure out how to write 3 times X equals 2 more than Y. Number 3, the mascot company wants to spend no more than $1,250 per month on the cost of school spirit items for sporting events. I'm going to pause right there and underline no more than $1,250 because that's going to show me that I have some sort of a budget. If I think about what it means to be within my budget, that means that I can spend less than my budget or exactly equal to my budget, but I cannot go higher than my budget. So if I want to spend no more than, that means that I can spend less or I can spend exactly equal. I just can't go higher. I'm going to keep reading now. Production costs are $5 per shirt and $8 per banner. The company also wants their monthly gross revenue from selling shirts and banners to be greater than $3,000. That's another key piece of information that I'm going to underline. And greater than 3,000 literally means that I would just write greater than 3,000. So now I see that I have 2 separate inequalities that are happening in this situation. You might be able to narrow down your answer choices just by figuring out which symbols are correct for this scenario. We know that one shirt is going to sell for $15, a banner sells for $20, and an employee of the company wants to determine the number of shirts and banners that the mascot company is going to produce in a month. We're going to let the letter S stand for shirts and B stand for banners. Which system represents the situation presented? So our 2 different inequalities that we're going to have is going to be one inequality showing how much money the mascot company spends on making these items. The other inequality is going to be how much money the mascot company makes by selling these items. Number 4, in a game, the 2 players scored a total of 121 points. One player had 13 more points than the other player. How many points did the player with the fewer points score? So what we need to do is use the information that's given to us to set up some equations that contain that information. So in a game, 2 players scored a total of 121 points. I'm just going to use X and Y for my variables. So I can say that player X plus player Y, their points together was 121 points. And then the next sentence gives us more information. It says that one player had 13 more points than the other player. It doesn't matter which one I say is which. I'm just going to say that player X The points for player X was equal to 13 more points than what player Y had. Now what you need to do is actually work through the substitution method to figure out the values for X and Y. So if X is equal to Y plus 13, that means I can put Y plus 13 right here in the place of X in my first pink equation. And then I would combine my like terms and simplify to solve for Y. Once I have the value for Y, I can put that here and add 13 to it to find the value of X. Another method that you can do is come through, since it's multiple choice, and just test each of the options. So for 108, that would be my player with the fewest points, and then figure out how many points the other person would have if they have 13 more than this, and see if the sum is 121. You can do that process on all of the answer choices. You can just check them individually against the problem, or you can solve the equations I have down at the bottom by using the substitution method. Number 5, Laverne already knew 2 appetizer recipes before starting culinary school, and she will learn 3 new appetizer recipes during each week of school. After 2 weeks of culinary school, how many total appetizer recipes will she know? And this question's just wanting you to type the number answer into the box and submit. You don't have to type an equation, an expression, a variable, none of that, just the actual number answer. So if we want to map this out, we could use a visual model, but you can also just think about it logically. She already knows 2 recipes. Those are her old recipes. And then she's going to learn 3 new ones during each week of culinary school. So during week 1, she's going to learn 3 more. And then during week 2, I'm abbreviating, she's going to learn 3 more. So what you would need to do is just simplify that expression right there to get your answer. Number 6, the expression negative x squared plus 70x minus 600 represents a company's profit for selling X number of items. For which numbers of items sold is the company's profit equal to 0? So your goal is to find values of X that make this equation equal to 0. So you have some choices on how you can do that. You can either check each little answer into the equation by plugging it in, see which ones give you an answer of 0, or you can use the quadratic formula to solve this equation right here. If you choose to use the quadratic formula calculator that we were using online, you would plug in your A value of -1, your B value of +70, and your C value of -600. And then you would just solve this using the quadratic formula. You can do that using your formula sheet. The quadratic formula is right here for you from your formula sheet. So you can plug in your A, B, and C values into this and solve. You can use the online quadratic formula calculator that I showed you in class, but that's not available on your EOC, so use it wisely. Or you can just go in and check each value. So you would have to test 20, 30, 10, 60, 0, and 35 into the equation individually to see which one or which ones give you an answer of 0. Number 7, the product of 2 consecutive positive integers is 132. Which choice is the equation that models this situation? So to help get started, you're going to need to write an expression for each of those integers, figure out how to write the first one, and then how to write the second one. And we will use the key information product to write an equation equal to 132. So I'm going to help you get started by mapping those out. The first integer, we can just call it n. We don't know the value, but we know that we can use a variable to hold our place. The second integer, since they are consecutive, means they come one right after the other. So our second integer is just 1 higher than our first integer. And then you will need to multiply them together. We know the product is 132. Now right here where I'm pointing, doesn't have an exact match to anything that I see in my answer choices. So what you'll need to do is simplify that expression, n times n plus 1 equals 132, and see if it then matches any of these. If it doesn't match, then you might need to take another step to maybe subtract something from both sides and see if you can get your answer to match one of these choices. Number 8, an object is thrown into the air with an initial velocity of 5 meters per second from a height of 9 meters. This equation models the height of the object in meters after t seconds. About how many seconds does it take for the object to hit the ground? Round your answer to the nearest tenth of a second. I'm going to underline this information right here because that's going to tell us what we set our equation equal to. If the object is hitting the ground, that means that its height is 0. It's not above the ground anymore. Its height is 0. So you'll need to take this equation that was given to you, set it equal to 0, so you can just put a big fat 0 right here. And now you're going to solve for the variable t. You can use the quadratic formula, or you can use that online quadratic formula calculator, or you can test the answer choices individually by plugging them in the place of t and using your calculator to simplify, and you're wanting to get the answer as close to 0 as possible. Number 9, consider this function for cell duplication. The cells duplicate every minute. We have f of x equals 85 times 2 to the power of x. And our 4 choices are describing what the 85 represents and what the number 2 represents in this situation. Right here we have the breakdown of what the growth and decay function stands for. This value that's in front of the parentheses is called our initial amount. That's our starting value. So you'll have to come over here and find it, that it's 85, and then figure out how to say that 85 is our initial amount. Then the number that's inside the parentheses all together, the one that gets the exponent, that's called our growth rate. So what we need to do is figure out what that 2 represents. What does it mean to grow by the whole number 2? If you remember, 2 is equal to 200%. That means that I'm doubling. If I take 200% of something, I am doubling the amount. The last question, number 10, says you drink a beverage with 120 milligrams of caffeine. Each hour, the caffeine in your system decreases by about 12%. Which equation represents the situation? I'm going to come through and I'm going to underline some of that key information. I'm starting with 120 milligrams of caffeine, so I know that that can go in the place of this initial amount. I also know that I'm decreasing by 12%. That means I'm starting with 100%, or 1, and I'm subtracting 12%, or 0.12. This is going to be my growth rate. I just need to simplify that down to show what the actual amount of caffeine is doing in my system.